back to the bridge. Okay, so I'm privileged to have Paul Davis, former Senator Paul Davis, and now Piscataquis County Commissioner Paul Davis, here on the show with us. We thought about doing a more traditional style of an interview, but I think we'll ask him some questions, but we'll also just to have a simple discussion. The more I've gotten into the media side of things, there's been a serious need for uniting the right. And I've used that expression many times in our videos. And Paul has been active in Republican politics for a heck of a lot longer than I have. And both of us have experience on the side of campaigning. And we'd love to find a spot that both younger Republicans and older Republicans can unite. Party leadership can work together. And how can we attract young people to get into the party? I was at a meeting Saturday, and there were probably 10 of us under the age of 40, and I'm being generous there. But first, we'll start off with an intro, Paul. When did you get into Republican politics?
Boy, you're asking some pretty. Barry Goldwater ran for president in 1964. And I think it was along that time that probably I got into it. My parents got into it pretty deep, and I had an uncle in Abbott Village. Frank Titcomb was my uncle, and of course he was into politics deep.
Sure.
It was along that time.
Sure. Did anyone come and ask you to run, or did you have a personal conviction about it?
It was so prevalent in my family. I mean, it was literature all over the house.
Sure.
And, signs. My folks owned a store in Dexter, right on the corner of Wall Street and Main Street, and they just covered the windows with Goldwater signs and stickers.
It's pretty awesome.
Awesome, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, that would be awesome to see more in our small businesses. A willingness to express political views. What do you think on that?
Some do, some don't. The Republican stand on business is much more favorable to business than what the Democrats are. But some businesses feel that it's a drag on their business, that some people don't like it. I have had in the past in my campaigns, of which I've had many, I've had businesses put my literature out. I've had them put it. The restaurant in Sangerville used to have my campaign signs mounted right inside the restaurant.
Is that Dottie's, was it?
No, in Sangerville, the Village restaurant.
Oh, that's right, yep.
And in Dexter, the Dexter Cafe, it was run by Morris and Corrine Neal, who, by the way, sadly just passed away.
Sure.
They used to put my sign inside their restaurant and campaign for me hard.
What was the time frame for those?
Oh, that was back, with the Village restaurant, it was every campaign until they closed.
Yeah.
And that didn't cause them to close.
Sure.
The restaurant was full all the time. The one in Dexter, that was about the same thing. They did it until, I think, reapportionment changed things in 2008, I think. And I no longer had Dexter in my district. I had Millinocket instead. And that's when I think they stopped doing it.
Now, because of redistricting, is Dexter back in that district? Because I think Stacey Gearin had that town, correct?
Dexter is back in the district.
That's what I thought.
And it goes all the way down through and includes Levant.
Yeah.
Down that way. Charleston. All the towns that I had in Penobscot County, which was Bradford and Charleston and Garland, Dexter. I don't know if there's any more or not. There might have been. But anyway, I had those towns. They all joined in with the towns that Stacey represented, which was Levant and down that way, plus Piscataquis County.
Sure.
The Somerset towns went over with the Farmington district.
So is it the entire county that went there?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, in Piscataquis County, we're an aging county, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a large number of young people here. What would you think would be an awesome way to get more people, such as myself, active? I've discussed things with a ton of people my age, and blue collar, fiscal, and social conservatives. But the idea of getting active in party politics seems like something their grandparents would do.
Well, to say the very least, it's difficult to do
Yeah.
that. We don't offer the same thing that the other side does. We mostly, most Republicans are socially conservative, and they also, most of them are fiscally conservative. And sometimes that doesn't appeal to the young people, but it will eventually.
Yeah.
I think it was Winston Churchill that said, if you aren't a liberal when you're young, then when you become, how did that go? If a man isn't a liberal when he's young, and he's not a conservative when he's old, when he's young, he has a heart. When he's old, he doesn't have a heart. Something along that line. I don't think I got it right. But anyway, you need to. We need to find ways to reach out to young people.
Sure.
We do offer a number of things. We offer opportunity to young people. We want young people to succeed in life. We encourage them as much as we possibly can. We give, there's a lot of training that we give young people in the political arena. We give good reasons why they should believe in the Republican philosophy, smaller government, more individual responsibility, that type of thing. A better chance to succeed if you start a small business, and we don't want to hammer the business. We don't want to overburden it with regulations and rules and on, although it seems to be a never-ending battle to keep it away, and that type of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's I think it's the college Republicans. My former boss on the 2022 campaign, he did a fantastic job with the college Republicans at UMaine and statewide. And they did a lot of things to, simply just set up tables and sign people up and get people active. And it was almost like they ran a campaign to get young people rather than run a campaign to get somebody elected. I wonder if there's more stuff we can do locally to get people active. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what we can do. I remember you and I did voter registration once at I think it was Robinson's in the area. I think
it could have been.
I think so. Yep.
Remember.
I wonder if there's more stuff we could do to be active in the community and sign people up. It would be cool to see if we could create a group like the college Republicans just for a high school level. I don't know. There might be potential there. I know being active on social media is a thing that is needed.
Well, the college Republicans do a remarkable job. It hasn't been easy for them, though. There is a certain amount, I believe, of discrimination against them by the colleges themselves. I can remember getting a call one day from a young person at one of our colleges, one of our public universities, and he told me that they were not allowed to meet. They weren't given a place or anything like that. I was the Republican leader in the Senate at the time, and I made a phone call, and that cured it. They had a place to meet right after
that has to get to that point.
And it grew, and the Republicans grew. The young people are interested in it, and in the long run, we offer a much better thing than the Democrats do.
Sure.
We allow individuals to speak, say what is on their mind.
Yep.
I can remember a certain state representative who was a Democrat. He was from the Waterville area, and he spoke his mind on different things. And sometimes it wasn't what the party leaders and some of the special interests wanted.
Yep.
And they made an example of him, and they drove him out. And he lost. He ran for the state senate after being in the House, and they targeted him. They elected a person that had any of the expertise that he did.
Sure.
But she was a good follower, and that was the difference. There's a huge difference between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats believe in big government. They want more control. They want things mandated to their following. And the Republicans want more individual responsibility. They want a stronger defense. They don't want to spend so much money on social programs and domestic issues.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
No, you're 100% right. You know, you talk about personal responsibility. I think a huge emphasis on freedom comes with that. You know, we look at states like Florida and Tennessee and Texas and, quite frankly, Georgia and a couple others remaining free and open during times like the pandemic. Whether you're young or you're old or middle-aged or no matter the age, having the opportunity and the freedom to do what you'd like, whether it comes to business or career or whatever it is, the Democrats, in the name of control, often fight against that.
That is very true. I think a lot of that is being exposed right now, especially with Mr. Musk on Twitter. There's a lot of things that are coming out. But there's no question. We need transparency.
Yep.
We need to have a crystal clear view of what's going on and what is happening in this world. And without that, then bad things happen.
Yep. And people need to be willing to speak their mind, you know. I think that's a big thing is Christians, conservatives, and Christian conservatives alike have gone dead silent. And I don't like to crap on our side of the aisle. I really don't, but the issues there need to be called out. I think it was in Georgia. It was, I could be wrong on the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was 200,000 voters who voted on November 8th for Herschel Walker stayed home this time around.
And he would have won if they'd voted.
Yep, exactly.
That's tragic. That's very tragic that we lost that election and empowered the other side quite a bit. Although the lady from Arizona has changed from Democrat to Independent, but she, I believe, is going to caucus with the Democrats, so there probably won't be a big change.
Kirsten Sinema, right? Yeah.
Yes. It's a struggle. It's an awful struggle.
No, it is.
All the time. And you battle and, you know, what the other side offers is free tuition to college and this and that and the other.
Sure.
$850 checks and a so-called surplus. And the only reason we got a surplus was because of the infusion of a huge amount of federal money, which is all borrowed.
Yep.
It's all borrowed money, and it did drive our sales tax up, and we had a bunch of money. I can tell you, I was there. The other side not only wanted to spend this money on ongoing programs. We had a $1.2 billion surplus. They wanted to spend it on programs. We said no, and we said no numerous times. And finally, they agreed that we would send money back to the people. $730 million went back to the people. And that's where it belonged, back with the people. At the same time, there was another, just under $500 million. Well, we spent that. We brought the education funding up to the 55%, which was recommended years ago. We gave, let me think just for a second, what else did we do? Instead of borrowing money to fund the Department of Transportation, we gave them $100 million. Unheard of.
Yeah.
And yet, surprise, surprise, the Democrats came in and wanted us to borrow more money for the Department of Transportation.
Sure.
Well, we didn't go along with it, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it very well could have. I mean, we're horribly in debt right now.
Yep.
And we need to get our house in order.
We surely do. You know, I think that's something, though, that the Republicans have campaigned on, and depending on your demographic, it's a winning argument, and then for some it's not. Mm-hmm. I think, well, when I worked on the campaign, it was fantastic. I loved my time there. It was great. But we were always told The economy is the big issue. The economy is the big issue. The economy is the big issue. Campaign on that. And for many, it was a great talking point, and you could discuss issues with people, and it worked. But the tactics we used often skipped an entire demographic. People my age. I had a discussion recently. I can't remember who it was with. I think it might have been, it was a guy from church. If you look at people my age, we have been raised in a world where political discourse is not exactly so civil anymore. We were all in, my class was in 6th grade when the 2016 election came. We've been raised in not so civil political discourse, we can just put it that way. And we've also been raised in a generation where social issues are what we focus on, and then the economy tends to come after. With the efforts we made on the 2022 campaign, door knocking was the number one priority, which worked in many ways. We reached a ton of people. Then phone calls were the number two. And I question how productive that was. I don't want to...
You're referring to the phone calls.
What's up?
You're referring to the phone calls.
The phone calls, yep.
How productive that was.
Out of speculation, I don't think it was overly effective. Mm-hmm. And I think we made over 3 million voter contacts. Let's break that down. Who did we reach, and how many were actually quality conversations? We had many nights where there were phone banks, and on the system we used, we had this thing called Power Dialer, and it would spam like 5 phone numbers, and you were lucky if one picked up.
That's right.
And if one picked up, you were told to F off half the time. And then you got lucky if you had an answer. And speculation is that a lot of people lied so that way you wouldn't have their information.
That's right.
So you spent a lot of time making phone calls, and it was not exactly productive. And then, according to what I learned on Saturday, the text messages were factored into the 3 million voter contacts. I do not know if that's true, but I've heard that. If that's the case, I could show you hundreds upon hundreds of GOP text messages I have received, and I don't respond to any of them. So all of that to say, are our tactics working? What do you think?
They're working well, for sure.
Yeah.
The most important thing you spoke of in regards to campaigning and being effective is door knocking. There is no question. You knock on doors, you do the best that you can to reach people. You need to be effective at it. And I have always felt it depends on the time of day.
Sure.
My goal, the campaigns that I ran, have been to reach, in one way or another, by my door knocking, as possible, as many as possible. I prioritize the times that I would go. I would go at 9 o'clock in the morning until about 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon. Probably 1 out of 4 were home. But at the same time, I got to leave a lot of literature in other homes where no one was there. I think it worked well.
Yeah.
And I have no use for the robocalls and that type of thing. I think there are some instances. For example, if we have a county caucus, when we do have our county caucuses, I've done a robocall to all the Republicans in our county, just telling them about the county caucus, when it's going to be and what time and everything.
Sure.
And you reach everybody that way.
Yep.
And that's reasonably effective. I mean, we usually have 100 to 150 people come to those.
Sure.
So that's but beyond that, most people just hang up on you, or they won't pick up. They won't answer. Text messages might be a little different. I've never thought about that much.
Well, the text messages, they
you
can
text me this morning, and I weren't smart enough to look at it.
It's all good. But I think that's something we run into is I could scroll down to my messages right here, and there are hundreds upon hundreds that I have received between the 2020 election through now. And I've had conversations with people and personal experience. The text messages are half the time ignored just as much as the phone calls, because after a while it's, okay, I know who I'm voting for. Yeah. There's only so many times I can see the name of a candidate without flushing it out. I had an idea, though, and I want to know what you think of this. So I mentioned Generation Z and people my age. And I remember before the interview, you and I were talking about shorts content. So like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, you get the point. Let's say we took a night of people phone banking. So let's say there's 25 people in the room, and you took half of them. They were making phone calls, and the other half were recording videos campaigning and putting out 2-minute, 2.5-minute campaign videos and flooding those platforms. Do you think that would be more effective for reaching people my age? Because I had phone calls with people. I had 2 people I graduated with, and they called me. One said, who do I vote for? And the other asked me, how does ranked choice voting work? Yeah. Went about 2.5 minutes on each call. Now make sure those are video. Picture how many people you could reach.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be more effective than just having a general phone bank. I don't think that's effective at all. Videos, anytime you can show yourself, is a good thing. There's underlying things, too, that you need to consider. Civility is important.
Sure.
Let's be grown-ups. We don't need to hate each other. I was on a panel the other day in Augusta, and the title of the panel was, what would I do when I started, if I know what I know now? Well, civility is very important, as I said. And back when I first started, the Democrats and the Republicans actually talked to each other, and they didn't seem to hate each other. But even so, there were still sharp differences. I had a seatmate. His name was Buddy Murray. He's now a Superior Court judge. He helped me get acclimated, get used to it, figure out where everything was, from where the bathrooms were to where the calendar clerk's office was.
Sure.
And everything. And he didn't have to, but he did. It was a thing to do. You helped whoever was there. We all had to represent the people. And it worked well.
Yep.
Go forward. There's been major differences. It seems that insulting each other is the norm. Insulting and being nasty to people. Doing things that, I mean, if you want to have a schoolyard bully, then go find one. But there's no need of calling people names and all that sort of thing. And it just detracts from...
100% agree.
There's an old saying down in Augusta that I have used a number of times. There's 186 people in the Maine legislature. That means there's 186 towns that are represented. Well, perhaps a few have multi-districts, but all in all, you're representing all those people. What will be remembered 20 years later, after the legislature, in your mind is far gone, no longer there, will not be the issue at hand. The issue that you talk about when you're there is long forgotten, whether it be a tax increase or what.
Sure.
But what will be remembered is how you take care of each other, how you look after each other, and how you treat each other.
Sure.
That will be remembered.
Yep.
Far beyond anything else.
No, you're 100% right.
And I've always had that in my mind. And there's it's amazing. The person that came up with that was a very autocratic person. He was in leadership, and he ran his committees with iron fist.
Yep.
For a while. But then, as time went by, he come to realize that wasn't the way to do it. And he offered more sunlight into the whole thing, I guess I could say. Transparency is very important.
Sure.
We need to be very transparent in all the things we say and do.
No, you're 100% right. Well, that makes me think of, I think of what was in, it was in the Brewer area. I was campaigning for LePage, Paul Quinn, and I think Jen Morin. 3 fantastic candidates, great people. And campaigning on that side of town was always interesting. There was a lot of old school liberals. There was fiscally conservative Republicans and undecided people. So you never knew what you were going to get. And on the Advantage app, you sometimes could trust the voting record, sometimes you couldn't. And I ran into a guy who, I knocked on his door, and he came up, and he was talking to me through a screen door. And at first I thought he was going to be pretty much on the same side as me. And as we started to discuss the issues, or let's just say the expletives started flying my way. Yet he had talked about unity about 10 seconds before that. Yeah. And I said to him, once he kind of slowed down, I thought to myself, okay, should I leave or should I confront him? Well, given the ballsy attitude I had, I decided to confront him. And I said, sir, I'm more than willing to discuss these issues with you. Truly, I would. I love discussions like this. But hollering you're effing ignorant after discussing unity, it's not going to do anything. So if you're interested in discussing these issues, I am more than willing to. And I'm more than willing to ask questions. And I'd love to ask questions about your side of the issue. I said, there's a good chance we may not be quote-unquote unified on these issues, but I don't expect that. Civility and discourse is the biggest thing. And oh my word, he was shocked. He was blown away that someone was willing to say something like that. And he said, you know what? I'm going to take you up on that. About 10 minutes goes by discussing these issues, and he and I did not agree on a gosh darn thing. But what went from, you're effing ignorant, it went to, oh, we don't agree, but
we don't hate each other.
Exactly. Sure. And, you know, I said, sir, I got to get going to the next door because my number's a little lower than they should be. But I said, I really hope there's a day that we can be unified on the mentality of civility and discourse, not the unity that politicians use, because that means do what I want. When you hear unity come out of a politician's mouth, often that's a red flag.
Yeah, come my way.
Exactly. So not politician unity, but unified in the common mentality of civility and discourse should be the goal. And we're brothers and sisters in being Americans. Let's be able to walk into a grocery store and shake each other's hands and not wonder if there's a D or an R next to our names. And you know, the coolest thing was, he said, you know what, I'm going to take you up on that. He opened the screen door and he shook my hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all it took was asking questions, being loving and respectful. Yep. And
it makes a tremendous difference.
Yeah.
The civility does. And as I say, you don't need to hate each other.
Yeah.
You certainly should differ. I mean, we grow because we differ. You have a different idea, you have a different attitude towards things. But this trash that is infested into our system, in my estimation, should be gone. I don't think it does anything.
Now, we've talked about opposite sides of the aisle. What do we do to unite the right? Because for a while, it seemed that while the polar opposite views were left and right and angry at each other and hateful towards each other, that was bad enough. 2016 through 2020, it seemed that there was a consistent, I guess you could say, growth in support for Donald Trump. Now, 2 years later, there is a rock-solid base that will not move from him. There are people like me who, if he's the party nominee, I'll vote for him. But I'm skeptical on wanting him in that position. I'd much rather choose someone like Ron DeSantis. And then there are some who would have considered him back in 2016, but will not touch him with a 10-foot pole. And the exact same political discourse that I've seen between far-left individuals and more dedicated right-wingers as myself, that tension and hate, I'm seeing it on the right. As I've voiced concerns both in personal discussions and on social media on, can Trump bring in independent or quote-unquote more moderate voters? Or, okay, it's guaranteed that DeSantis can. As I voice those concerns, I can see people on the more hardcore right, the more dedicated right. They sound just like the people on the left, yelling and screaming. Well, how do we fix that?
Boy, oh boy, that's a tall order. I tell you, I don't believe, I think I'm in the same camp you are on as far as President Trump running again. I would rather he didn't. I think I campaigned hard for him. I worked hard for him the second time around.
Yep.
The first time I supported Ted Cruz. And
Same.
when he lost, I put Trump's sign up and I voted for him. Can he draw in? No, I don't think so. I don't think the independents will go for him. I think I had a former Democrat senator in Bangor I met one day down there, and I asked him about LePage. I said, who's going to win the governor's race? And he looked at me and he said, why do we want to go back to that? And that's the attitude that developed, and people felt that way. We get to learn to be more tolerant of each other's opinion. That's not to say we need to compromise it. I think that the social issues certainly are very important to most Republicans. Some of them have a more liberal view of social issues than I do. I don't believe in abortion in any way, shape, or manner. There are a number of people, friends, that feel we should have some minor restrictions and some more major restrictions, but they still would tolerate abortion. Homosexuality is another thing, another area. Some feel that it's an inherited thing. Others feel that it's a learned behavior. I happen to feel that you can control yourself one way or another.
Like you say, I see that as there's a difference between lust and love.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's an interesting comment.
That's going to get me canceled.
You'll learn right off quick the difference between lust and love, because the one that lusts doesn't stick around.
Uh-huh.
The one that loves, better or worse, forever and ever until death do you part.
No, you're 100% right.
And that's the difference, and there's no question about it. Interesting, very, very interesting, Sam, this discussion now.
Well, okay, when
How
it comes
can they
to
bring us together? As I said, I think we need to be more tolerant of the opinion of others. That doesn't mean we got to compromise.
now, what do you mean by tolerant? Like, develop on that.
To stop and listen to them.
Okay.
Being a good listener is very important. You don't need to scream in each other's face.
Sure.
That's not going to get us anything other than disgust. That's all that's going to get us. Be tolerant enough to listen to them. Consider their opinion. I don't agree with them, and I would not support them. You can look at the record. I never once supported any of that stuff. I might have cast a vote once for harness racing at the fairs, but it was only once. and I probably shouldn't have. I don't want to blame my seat. It wasn't him. I did it on my own. I shouldn't have. I was wrong. Gambling is an evil.
Yeah.
Gambling is wrong, and we've gone from a state that produces, manufactures, and all that, to between welfare and gambling and abortion on demand and all that stuff.
Yep. And we've seen individuals on the right squish.
Yes.
Okay, so that's something that I thought about, because when I hear the terms, there's two terms that always raise a red flag in my mind, especially when it comes to people on the right. It seems, let's take the left, they're consistently moving towards on the right, we often use the term radical left. An old school liberal, I think you mentioned Kristen Sinema earlier, there's not many people like her. Joe Manchin, not many people like her that are willing to discuss things with people on the right. On the right side of the aisle, though, we're seeing that same current towards the left. And Yeah, I had a discussion. We've got a second show that we're working on, the Roman and TJ show. Roman wanted to brand himself as a moderate. And I discussed it with him. I said, man, you're not a moderate. And I said, 2 years ago, I branded myself the same way because I thought it was a chance to get closer with people on the left and bring them in. But then I realized, the more I am branding myself as a moderate, the weaker I seem, the more I am likely to sacrifice my values, the more likely I am to step closer to the left in the name of bringing people over to our side, where I'm subsequently just moving closer to where I don't want to be. I hear the term moderate, and I have friends and family members who, they're great people, and it's in the name of being nice and respectful, but they're fiscally conservative in the social issues they hand to the left. In the name of toleration, rather than what you said, just listening. Because I like that. If tolerant means listen, that's awesome. I agree with that completely. But I often hear the term tolerance, and it's the attitude of, you do you, just don't push it on me. But we've been doing that for a long time. I'm trying to think. It was a guy I used to know, great guy, wicked nice guy, but he always had that attitude. We've been doing that for so long. We've had that attitude of, you can do you.
Yeah.
Don't push it on me. But now look at the state of our culture. Whether it's, take the LGBTQ community. I don't hate them. Often people will say you're homophobic. But we've had that attitude of, you do you, don't push it on me. Yet we've forgotten what tough love is. If you're not willing to call out the sin, you might as well just embrace it. Am I wrong in that?
No.
I guess if you're socially and fiscally conservative.
Who was it that said for evil to prosper? All men have to do is just sit back and do nothing.
I'm sorry, what?
Who was it that said that for evil to prosper, good people just need to sit back and do nothing?
Yep.
And that's very true. It is. Boy.
Yep. Well, I guess
Our attitude is important, to be sure.
Sure.
And to be tolerant doesn't mean that you surrender or that you accept the other viewpoints.
Yep.
There's no reason to at all. But as I said earlier, you got to be a good listener. You got to be a good listener. You can't always say no. You get to listening and screaming at people. You always say no to that. It doesn't do any good.
Well, I learned that on the campaign trail. I had the attitude originally of guns ablazing, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to fix everything, and then I was like, whoa, I got to slow down.
That's not going to happen so quick as
Exactly.
you think it's going to do.
Discuss these issues with people.
Yeah.
Hear their point of view. See, that was the thing, is if you're willing to ask questions and let them lead the conversation, first off, you run less of a risk of making yourself look like a fool. You learn where these people come from. You can research their side of the aisle and see if you're even right to begin with. And you learn ways to defend yourself in future conversations. You know, I brought up the discussion I had with Roman with the other show we're setting up. When it comes to moderate views...
Excuse me, who is Roman?
Roman, he's going to be the host of the Roman and Tanner show. We got another show coming up. Guys, you ought to check it out. It's going to be fantastic.
What's his last name?
Cassidy. He used to go to school with me at Bangor Christian.
I see.
Fantastic guy. TJ Beans is going to be the co-host on that show. Hopefully, we can really cover politics on both shows, but I think on this one it's going to be a lot more hardcore, tough love conversations, and they'll be covering some more lighthearted issues, whether it's cultural or pop culture or political. But the thing is we were talking, he wanted to brand it as a moderate show to try to bring people in. And I basically said, hold on.
Branded as a moderate show.
If you brand it as a moderate show, you run the risk of stepping closer to the left and not necessarily throwing your values out the window, but you're stepping closer to the left. You don't want to do that.
Now, you've played your hand,
Exactly.
so to speak. You were dealt a hand and you've thrown the cards out and
Yep.
said, here I am, this is where we're at. Well, that's stupid.
Well, the cool conversation
That's
was...
like the president negotiating, and he brings home a woman that hates America, and
one of the
Marine,
number one arms dealers.
a Marine, he leaves there and gives one of the most murderous people in the world a free life.
I shouldn't
Go
chuckle
home.
the way I did, but I laugh at how asinine it
It's
is.
so stupid. It's so stupid. This guy's our president.
Yep.
My word.
Well, when it comes to branding as a moderate with that conversation I had, though, was I said, keep the rock solid, less moderate values, but present them differently. I said, you have Ron DeSantis down in Florida who can be a little bit more upfront and blunt with his views, but he also won his election by 20%. He blew Charlie Crist out of the water. I said, take Glenn Youngkin, though. Very similar values, but a very different presentation. If Virginia was so deep blue, he should not have won that state. But he campaigned on social issues. White suburban mothers usually don't vote overwhelmingly with the right. He won a ton of them. Younger people, he won a ton. The Loudoun County situation. That won him the election, but he presented his values in a socially conservative way that was confident but loving.
Yeah.
He's even gotten pro-life
Well,
legislation pushed.
He spoke out on things that were important to people. He said he would reform schools.
Yep.
And an awful lot of people feel that schools have overreached in the social issues. They are not teaching what they need to be teaching. Kids are learning stuff that they definitely don't need to learn. And it all needs to be changed.
Yep.
And Glenn Youngkin spoke out strongly on it. Ron DeSantis had done some of that previously.
Yep.
And the schools were much better in Florida. He's a hands-on guy. He just the hurricane they just recently had. Where was he? He was right in the middle of it.
Yep.
And he's done a remarkable job.
Yep.
I personally think he'd make a great president.
You do a fantastic job.
I had the privilege a couple years ago of meeting with the governor of South Dakota, Christy Noon.
She would be a fantastic, I think.
Well, I would rather have her as president than I would vice president.
Really?
Well, I like her stand on everything.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that would happen.
Yeah.
But she certainly has done a lot in her state. She took great political risk and said no to the lockdowns and to the mandates and all of that.
Yep.
And her state certainly had COVID, but they survived it. Most of them. Few obviously didn't.
Yep.
But now, prosperity-wise, they're booming.
Exactly.
And we sat here in envy of them.
Yep. Well, I think that's a big reason Florida did so well is, yes, he got independent voters, but people voted with their feet.
Absolutely. The other thing that I believe we've done wrong, and I've thought this for some time, and I think I can prove that we've done wrong, not just by the results, but by what other people have done. Change comes hard to the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
Change comes difficult. We don't like change in a lot of ways. The early voting is something that President Trump didn't like, didn't want anything to do with it. Other leading politicians on our side don't want anything to do with it, and we're making a huge mistake. It's like the clean election system that we have here in Maine. A lot of people don't like it, so they won't do it. Well, they're wrong. It is the hand we're dealt. And if we want to change it, we've got to get there. We've got to get the majorities to change it. We had the majority one time. I signed on to a bill to abolish the clean election system. And the people that are some of the most conservative people in the state legislature spoke out against us doing that. They wanted to keep it because it was easy. and they didn't have to ask anybody for money, and on and on. Well, you know,
Wow.
if money is what does it for you, I remember the first time I ran a group of what we call sand and gravel people. There's organizations all over the state.
Yep.
I'm not going to pick out one particular, but they gave me a bunch of money, quite a bit.
Sure.
And they expected me to follow, get in line with them. Well, the first thing that year Angus King proposed, or came forward, was a gas tax increase. And I wouldn't go along with it.
Yep.
And they got mad. Oh, they got mad. Said they'd given me money, and why wasn't I getting along? Why wasn't I doing what they wanted to do, and on and on. They had a discussion in the President of the Senate's office over me not agreeing with them. And the President of the Senate told him he was going to call the Attorney General and have him prosecuted if they didn't get out of his office. I have any individual that's in the legislature has a right to vote the way they feel.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't vote for it, and didn't.
Yeah. And there's not many people that are willing to stand their ground like that.
I wouldn't do it.
I respect that.
And then they changed it. They increased the gas. I can't remember, 3 cents. Originally they wanted a nickel. They would increase it to 3 cents, and then added a couple of bucks on registrations. I still didn't vote for it.
Yep.
It was a non-starter.
Sure.
And it was interesting, but they felt that because they had given me some money, and they gave me a good amount,
Yeah.
that they owned me. That I had to do what they wanted me to do.
Yep.
Well, I didn't.
Yeah. No, I respect
Stand up
that.
for the people. And yet we supported giving them more money from the legislature. We funded them. We did a number of things for the organization, the Department of Transportation.
Sure.
I'm referring to. We didn't fund the individual businesses.
Yeah.
And they liked that pretty good.
Sure.
They wanted more, and they didn't get it.
Interesting. Well, I think that's a big thing. It comes down to standing your ground. And you know, we've talked about tolerance and civil discourse and, okay, it sounds like a cliche term, but being loving in general.
Yeah. Being kind, compassionate.
Yep.
Another time I remember, I don't like taxes. I think we're taxed too much. I think our bureaucracy is too big. I just look at this building here, and my gosh, how many of the employees that they have here, and every office has got a bunch of people in
Sure.
it, and it's a town of 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Do we need all that? They come up with this deal where we were going to remove lead-based paint from all buildings, and I think that's a very credible thing to be doing. The lead-based paint will cause blindness and causes all kinds of problems. And the unfortunate thing about it is it has a sweet taste to it, and kids will go for it. Well, they come up with an idea. They wanted more money. I don't think they needed it, but I probably would have gone along with giving them a little bit. But they wanted to put a tax on the wholesale sale of paint, 25 cents a gallon. And I wouldn't agree with it. And when the final vote came, 34 people, there's 35 senators, 34 of them voted for it, and 1 voted against it. And you know who that was?
You?
Me.
Yep.
I said no. And it never should have been. It was impossible to collect. It was a tax on the wholesalers. So,
Sure.
So we're taxing some guy down in Boston or Providence, Rhode Island or someplace, trying to collect that. No, you couldn't do it, and it was ridiculous anyway. We just shouldn't have done it.
Yep.
Government has the tendency that if they have a revenue shortfall, they don't look at their expenses and try to cut them. Government increases the revenues.
Yep.
And the revenues are taxes coming out of the rear end pocket of the taxpayers.
Yep.
And they shouldn't be doing that.
No, you're
That's what they
100%
do.
right.
That's what they do. Well, I don't know how long you want to go.
No, I think that's awesome because, you know, you kind of hit on everything. You hit on the remaining rock solid on the social issues, being socially conservative as your foundation, and then also, how do we reach people? How do we discuss things with people? What can we do now? You mentioned the Republican Party doesn't like change, and you best believe I saw that. That was a rude awakening. I definitely saw that over the course of the cycle. And now you've also hit on the fiscal conservative side of things. I like that because you have both. Quite often I see people that have one or the other.
They get squishy and wishy-washy. And
It's either squishy or wishy-washy or one or the other, and they're not willing to consider the other.
yeah.
I like that quite a bit.
I also think that, there was a young woman, I went to this thing the other day down in Augusta where I was part of a panel, and there was a young woman sitting at the table I was at, and we got to chatting, and she had just won her election, and
Yep.
she was a very pleasant person. She asked me for some advice. She said, "What would you advise me to do?" And the first thing I said, "Well, you got to be a good listener.
Yep.
And you got to take care of your people. Your people call you. Some of them didn't vote for you. Some of them had your opponent's sign on their lawn. And
Sure.
probably in 2 years, they'll have your opponent's sign on their lawn again. But they need you.
Yep.
You don't represent the activists.
Yep.
You represent the people."
Now, you mentioned political science. This is slightly off topic. We live in a community that's good old homeboys, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Dr. Evans and Chad Perkins ran recently in this area. And I don't know Evans personally, but I've heard he's a wicked nice guy. So in the name of being a nice guy, there were conservatives in the area that decided to vote for him. And there were a couple that even put their signs up amongst LePage, Paula Quinn, Stacey Gear, and a whole bunch of other people. How do we get people to vote policy over personality?
That's a difficult one.
It's a very difficult one, especially with Donald
Dr.
Trump.
Evans is a very nice man. He's a very fine man. He's well respected, and people like him, especially his patients. My wife went to him. She had a colonoscopy, and he told her that he didn't like what he saw in there and to have one again right away. And she did, and she had colon cancer. And she had to be treated for it, and she credits him with saving her life.
Yeah.
That's the attitude some people have towards him.
Yeah.
And I like him. He's a good guy. Would I vote for him? No, I wouldn't, because he's a great doctor, and I'd like to have him for a neighbor. But I don't want him representing me with the attitude.
100% right.
Things. And that is the difference. Would I run into a burning house if he was in it? Yes.
Yeah.
I've run into burning houses before, and I would again for Dr. Evans. But that's where it stops.
Sure.
He doesn't represent my values.
And I think that comes down to that loving, confident attitude, but also remaining with your principles.
Whenever you run for office, and I've run, I think 17 times I've run for office, and I won every one of them by a landslide. There's always a group that don't vote for you.
Yep.
If you run unopposed, like I just did recently for county commissioner, I got, 85% of the vote. The rest of them didn't vote.
No.
They wouldn't vote for me. If you were opposed, as Stacey was this time, Stacey got 13,000 votes. Her opponent got 5,000. Her opponent didn't do a thing,
Yeah.
but still got 5,000 votes.
What was Seidel, right?
Oh, no, that was Jim White.
Oh.
Jim White won. He got almost 3,000 votes.
Yeah.
And Mr. Seidel got a little over 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a group that will not vote for you. They won't compromise,
Sure.
and that's it. And you have to recognize that.
Yeah.
And those are the people you need to listen to. They will contact you. A lot of them are very politically astute, and they will contact you. They'll call you. They'll want to bend your ear on this and that and the other. Listen to them. Call them back if you need to, but you don't have to give in to them.
Yeah. No, 100% right. I think a lot of people are scared of that political pressure, too, when it comes to discussing things.
Well, I can tell you this about how things work. You go down to Augusta, and the hallways are full of lobbyists. And sometimes they have been taken to task because they get a little too old,
Yep.
too aggressive. They do not, in the Senate, they are not allowed to go on the floor of the Senate.
Yeah.
And they ignore that at times. And at times, the sergeant of arms will remove them. Telephone calls from lobbyists, messages from lobbyist base, say the Maine State Employees Association, they want a 20% raise. They're offered a 3% raise. They're mad. So they start calling you. They send you cards, pre-printed cards.
Yeah.
The calls are they aren't robocalls, but they're the same call.
Yeah.
And all that. You don't do it. Stick with your principles.
Yep.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't
Exactly.
do it. They will push their agenda as hard as they can against you. Don't do it. You get all these calls from the special interests. Say you get 50 calls from special interests. You get 5 calls from back home.
Yep.
Those calls from
Those
back
5
home are going to get a response.
Yep. Well, which one's going to get you elected? That's the question.
Well, that and those people are important to you.
Yeah.
They are your neighbors. They are your
Yep.
friends. They are the people that put you there and need you to speak up for them.
Sure.
Now, when I say speak up, we have people that get on the floor every time they turn around, and they rattle on and on and on, and somebody else will get up, and then they'll get up again and again and again. That doesn't get you anywhere.
Yep.
It's just repetition. The work that is really effective is what's done in committees, done in caucuses, and that place. Those are the places you really need to speak out. Now, they say in Augusta that one of the most dangerous spots to be in is in front of a movie camera with a politician wanting to get to it. And that is probably true. But it still doesn't get you much.
Yeah. Sure.
I've got to run. So
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Paul. It's been awesome. It's been great to have you.
enjoyed
And
it.
hopefully we can have more people like this on the show.
I would encourage young people to get involved. I would encourage young people to run for office,
Definitely.
get elected, do the work,
Yeah.
listen to your folks back home. There's no greater feeling than helping folks back home.
Exactly.
Trying to think. Your great aunt is Rochelle Titcomb, I believe.
Yep.
Her husband was in the hospital. He was my cousin. He had a rare blood disease.
Yep.
I went and visited him on a Friday one afternoon when I was coming home.
Yep.
And he told me that he had this disease. And he told me that he was going to die. And he knew it. He was going to be dead within 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
He said that his son, which would be your cousin, I believe,
Yep.
was in Korea. And he wanted to come home. He wanted him to come home. He wanted to see him before he died. They'd gone to the Red Cross and they'd tried nothing. They couldn't seem to spin a
Sure.
thread. So I said to him, I said, do you want me to try something? And he said, yeah, do whatever you can. Well, I had a friend that worked for Senator Collins out of the Biddeford office. So I called him and I told him what was going on. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. Wednesday or Thursday of the next week, I come home and there was a message on my answering machine. That was in the days when you had a tape.
Yeah.
Well, I played it, and it was my cousin, and he was crying. He said that he was looking into the eyes of his son.
No way.
It's a true story. And he couldn't thank me enough. He saw his son. At the funeral, I asked his son what had happened. He said, well, we were out in the field, and a Black Hawk helicopter come in. There was a guy with a star on his shoulder, a general, and he walked up to me and he said, you're going to Maine. And
My word.
he said they put him on a military transport. Now, this was right about 9/11.
Yeah.
Finding passage on a plane was tough. They flew him into either San Francisco or Los Angeles, I don't remember. It was in California anyway. They made room for him on a commercial flight. He flew into Bangor, Maine, and his father went down and got him.
Oh, my.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I got that day 22 years worth of pay.
Yeah.
That's the way I looked at it.
100%.
And when you can do things like that, when you can tell young people, this is what you can do,
Yeah.
this is how you can help your neighbor,
Yep.
that makes a big difference. And that is a true story.
We're constantly looking for identity, purpose, and fulfillment.
Yeah.
We have moved away from God completely, and we're looking. Identity is often where we're going now. So, I think that's a great message. Let's go back to faith-based principles.
Absolutely.
Love thy neighbor, and operate on that basis right there.
Treat
That
people
is
like you want to
fantastic.
be treated.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so easy to slide the other way, though.
Once you get away from fulfilling yourself by yourself and fulfill yourself via helping others,
Churchill's
gonna be great.
Churchill saying, and I recall it now. He said that when a man is young, as you are,
yeah,
if he has no compassion, he has no heart. If a man is old, as I am, if he has no sense, he has no brain.
yeah,
He's lost his brain. He's lost his thinking.
sure.
So, anyway, I enjoyed this discussion. How do I get to see this? How do I?
Well, it'll be out on YouTube. We'll have links on Facebook. There'll be smaller forms of it on TikTok, Instagram.
Can
It'll
you
be all
send
over
me-
the place.
Can you send me something? I got a new card now.
All right, I really appreciate it.
My email address is right there.
Fantastic.
You send it to me, and I'll watch.
All right, guys, this has been awesome. Follow the bridge. Light this up. Thank you so much, Paul Davis. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you, Sam.
fantastic day.